Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk about RGB and RGBA color values in CSS. In CSS there's a few different ways that you can express color, and one of those ways is RGB. So why RGB? Why red, green, and blue? Well, there's a really great Stack Overflow answer by the user named Piranha. And their answer has to do with additive and subtractive color. They say, with additive colors, the more you add, the brighter the colors become. This is because they are emitting light. This is why the daylight is more or less white, since the sun is emitting in almost all the visible wavelength spectrum. On the other hand, with subtractive colors, the more colors you mix, the darker the resulting color. This is because they are reflecting light. This is also why the black colors get hotter quickly, because it absorbs almost all light energy and reflects almost none. So the most common additive color system that we see is RGB, whereas the most common subtractive color system that we see is CMYK. Computer monitors and televisions use additive color because they are emitting light, whereas physical prints and graphics use subtractive color because they are absorbing light. So a physical good or a physical material like a shirt, that absorbs light, whereas a computer screen is emitting light. So if you've ever set up a new document in Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator, it will ask you what color profile you want to use, CMYK or RGB. And if you're going to print out the document, or if the document is for a physical good, you're going to use CMYK. Whereas if the document is for a screen, or if it's for the web, you're going to use RGB. So that's why we have RGB in CSS. And the way we express this RGB value in CSS, we use 3 numbers. And each of these numbers can have a value from 0 to 255. And the reason for that is because each of these values is represented by 8 bits. So to talk a little bit about bits and programming, 1 bit is a value that is either 0 or 1. So 1 bit can only have 2 possible values, 0 or 1. And we can express this as 2 to the power of 1. This represents 1 bit. This represents all the possible values for 1 bit, which is just 2 values. So if we have 2 bits, that will be 2 to the power of 2 possibilities, or 4. So 2 bits can result in 4 distinct values altogether. So again, each of these colors is 8 bits. So that means 2 to the power of 8 possibilities, or 256 possible values. And since these values start at 0, that means 0 to 255. So looking at the syntax of the RGB value, we have RGB and then parentheses and then 3 consecutive numbers separated by commas. And these numbers can be from 0 to 255. The first one represents red, always. The second one always represents green. And the third one always represents blue. So let's take a look at these. So this first one has 0 for each value, and that results in a black color. The second one here has full 255 for all 3 colors, and that gives white. These next 3 here has just a full value for each, for just one of the colors. So that first one is red, full 255. Second one is full value for green. Third one is full value for blue. And this next box is just random numbers. So again, you could have anything from 0 to 255. This one results in a pinkish color. You can also express these with percentages. So here I have 50% for red, 51% for green, and 86% for blue. So it's got more blue than red or green, resulting in a bluish purplish color. So what about RGBA? So A stands for alpha channel, and the alpha channel essentially stands for the opacity of the color. So in this instance, we have a box with a color, but for the opacity we have 0. And we actually have the same color here for the next 3 boxes. And this one has full opacity. So this alpha channel value goes from 0 to 1, and we can use a decimal to express this value. So this one is clear. You can't even see it. It just appears white, but that's just the background. The second one here has an opacity of 0.6, so you can see most of the color. And this third one has an opacity of 1, so it is a full value color. It's completely opaque. You can't see through it at all. So pretty cool. And I just want to share one more resource here. This is on the W3 Schools site. If you scroll down on this link that I'm sharing in the comments, you can go down here and move these sliders and take a look at all the different color values you can have for RGB. So that's pretty cool. So that is how you work with RGB and RGBA in CSS.